by Konami. And they were brilliant games. I actually preferred them over FIFA. But what put me off every time was the fact they had no licenses for the names. And it made me realise how important it actually is to have in it. So I think that a lot of fans that get this will be quite tuned in with the already vibrant independent wrestling scene that there is in the UK. And obviously seeing the logos they recognise, the wrestlers they recognise, it's going to be a big, I think, draw for them. With this for you guys, I think it's a massive plus for you guys that you've got that. In terms of like who's out there in the market already, are there any other games like this that you're about to put out, or is there anything that comes close, or is this, do you think, going to be quite original?
This is unique in its kind of setup. There are other wrestling games that are coming out that we've seen subsequent to this. We started speaking to a few people, and they were like, "Oh, there's another wrestling game coming out in the US, and there's another one coming out over here, and whatnot." But again, they're very much based on, actually getting in the ring and having a match, and you're a character and you're going up against another character, and you have to. One of the things that, again, from a real life perspective, in the wrestling world, you don't actually beat anybody, right? You have to work with someone. And your job is to put on a good match with that person. And the better matches you put on, the more over you get, the more likely it is that a promoter will then say, "Look, I want to book you. Will you be my champion?" and so on. You don't actually go into the ring and say, "I have to defeat this guy. I have to pin him 1, 2, 3." You just you have to just put on a match. So that's built into the game. So you'll start off at the bottom, and the better matches you'll have, you'll get more over in the game. Over is an actual term in the game, right? So you'll get more over in the game. The more over you are, the more likely it is that a promotion will turn around and say, "Look, we're going to put you higher on the card. You started off as an opener, now you're going to be a mid card, and then you're going to be a main eventer, and then we want you to be the champion." So you'll have like different tiers, and it's always about having the best match possible with your colleague, your fellow wrestlers. So and absolutely, we originally, when we sat down, we had computer generated names. We didn't want to have like, the Mock or the Thundertaker or stuff like that, right? We were just like, we've seen that before. We were like, we're just going to go completely with real, completely fully made up names, not kind of variants of real wrestlers. But thankfully, especially in Germany, we've had an explosion of interest in Germany of wrestlers. We've got WXW, GWF, and maybe about 5 or 6 other big German promotions, POWs in there. These are like the biggest names in German wrestling. They're all part of it. A lot of their roster's part of the game. So we're really pleased with how it's kind of shaped up from that point of view.
Sure, and I've just and you've got All Star Wrestling, which is one of my favourite promotions in this country. It's been going forever and ever. 50 years they actually were marking this year. So you got a real old school promotion there in Mr. Brian Dixon himself, with the guys like Dean Allmark, which is great for people like me. So I think there's something there for quite a variety of people, and I would say that if anything, I think this is going to hit that demographic of sort of a much maturer audience that kind of like that side of it. I think that's the niche, I would say, because like you say, a lot of these games, they are sort of centered around being the wrestler, going in the ring, smashing, whatever, sort of arcadey style games, I guess, which have their own place. But again, it's a market that's been kind of over flooded in a lot of ways. And then you add the sort of retro gameplay into it as well. It's even bigger. So I think this has got some real good stuff to come from it. Now, you personally, you've mentioned you're a wrestling fan. I always ask this to all my guests. Who were some of your favourite wrestlers growing up, and what was you a WCW or WWF guy back then? Or
so Bret Hart's my all-time favourite.
Same. So we hit there.
So, there you go. I think a lot of British people have a soft spot for Bret Hart.
I don't know what that is, but yeah, you're right. We do.
He's just like, he was a cool dude. He had the shade. You could tell a good story in the ring, and so he's my all-time favourite. And obviously, I'm a bit older, as you can probably tell from the demographic of the game. So you have different favorite wrestlers at different stages of your life, So when I was getting into wrestling, obviously Hulk Hogan was the main guy.
Yeah.
And after that, transition to Bret Hart. Then The Rock probably. Then after that, it just becomes like a whole jumbled stuff. Like AJ Styles at that point was one of my favorite wrestlers, Kurt Angle, and as you kind of grow older, back in the day, your wrestler would be top for like years and years and years, so you could have a favorite for a long time.
Yeah.
Wrestling post Attitude Era, like the top guy would change like every few weeks and months. So you just generally that would change. So my all-time favorite was Bret, and then when I was young, I was a bit of a WWF and a WCW guy. So originally I got interesting from WWF, and in the UK there used to be Sky, right?
Yeah.
And you could only watch WWF on Sky Sports or Sky One if you had it. And we went through a period of time, my family, where my dad just closed the Sky subscription.
Right.
And so I would say about 96, 97, my dad kind of closed it and just was like, nobody watches this aside from Rehan, so I'm not going to pay so much money for it. And then WCW at the time, if you remember, used to come on ITV and TNT for free.
Yeah.
Just before the NWO stuff. So obviously because I was a wrestling fan, I used to watch WCW on free channels, and then at the same time, coincidentally, that's when the NWO blew up. So I got massively into the NWO, and then my dad, like later on, decided he's going to put Sky back in, just as the Attitude Era was kicking off. Nice. Post DX, post the Hart Foundation, the next phase when Stone Cold and The Rock were on top. So then I had both WWF and WCW. So I used to do that back and forth thing. Because used to come on, I don't know if you remember, used to come on Friday nights.
Friday nights, oh my goodness. Yep. Yeah, that's good memories.
Yeah, so I used to just go back and forth between the two. So they used to have it on Monday in the US, but we had it on Friday in the UK.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, I was a bit of both, because I used to even watch, my uncle, he used to watch Japanese wrestling when around 93, 94. So like Rick Rude would go into Japanese wrestling, and Sting would go there, and Vader would go there. So I also used to have an appreciation of the WCW guys from there, but obviously WWF was a much bigger name. So yeah, I was into both of them. Even Impact TNA, when that came out, I used to enjoy watching their stuff quite a lot. When AJ was there, and Samoa Joe and Christopher Daniels and all those guys were there, Kurt Angle was there. They used to have so much more better shows than some of the WWF stuff. So that's kind of where I sit on that.
Yeah, it rings a few flashbacks for me there, because a lot of the guests I have on here are normally like I feel like the granddad normally when I'm doing this podcast. I'll be totally honest with you, but no, you definitely hit a few memories. Now, I'm just trying to think. WCW, was that when it was on like Channel 5? Did Channel 5 have it for a while?
So WCW used to come on ITV. They have a Saturday show, and it used to come like 4 or 5 p.m. in the afternoon, and so that was just like, it was free, right? So you just watch it.
Yeah.
And then they used to come on. So this is how I realized WCW was on TNT. So TNT used to come on after Cartoon Network. So one day I was watching cartoons on Cartoon Network, and Cartoon Network would shut at 7, and it would switch over to TNT. And every night on TNT it was like really old black and white movies and stuff. So I never used to watch it. And one day I just turned on the Sky, just a Friday night, turned it on, and wrestling's on, and I'm like, what is wrestling doing on Cartoon Network? And then I realized it was on TNT, and every Friday night after Cartoon Network would shut at 7, WCW used to come on from like 7 till 10 or 7 till 11, something like that. So that was completely for free. So that's how, ITV's, I think theirs was only for a very, very short period of time.
Right.
And the TNT thing was, Nitro was on there for a long time.
Yeah. Some good memories back then. And I used to what a lot of our younger listeners don't realise is back then you had the old teletext that used to come on. Sure you remember that, the days before the internet, and those damn hotlines that I used to call up on and spend about, I don't know, £50 on just listening to a load of rubbish basically. But I used to love it back then. You used to read these like crazy headlines, and most of it was always about Shawn Michaels returning, HBK to return, and blah blah blah. And you'd ring up, and then you'd have this guy talking the most slowest voice ever to keep you on the line. But yeah, rumours back then were a strange way to get information back then, but it was good.
Incorporate that into the game a little bit. Sorry to cut you off, because
that's fine, mate.
We again, I was just like you. I remember in high school, I told my friends, they used to come on teletext, we used to have the rumors and stuff, and I remember when they were saying that the Radicals they weren't called the Radicals at that point, but he said, Benoit, Guerrero, Saturn, Malenko were going to go to WWF. And so I told my friends, and they were like, oh, yeah, really? Because Benoit was like a big part of WCW at the time. Like, he was a main event. And they were like, he's not going to just jump to go to WWF. And I was like, no, it said on the rumors, right? And they were like, yep, you and your stupid rumors. And then about 2 weeks later, he turns up, and I was like, see, I told you he was going to go. And they were like, well, obviously we didn't believe you because, he was a big part of the show. And so what we've done in the game is we have an element where you have, not teletext, of course, we've modernized it a little bit. You have publications in the game, right? So you'll have, for example, we've got Wrestle Talker in the game, Cultaholica in the game. There's a German radio station that's in the game. They're big podcasts like Germany. And what will happen is in the game, you'll have an instance where Wrestle Talk will say, there's a rumor that you're going to join a promotion, and a certain promotion. Can you respond to the rumor? And depending on your response, you'll either get more over, you'll get less over, or you'll stay exactly the same. So it's a bit of a game of chance. Every single time. So, for example, if you turn around and say, yes, I'm going to join, and I'm looking forward to it, the first time you do that, you might increase your overness, but because it's completely random, if you try to choose that same answer the next time, it might not be the right response. Actually, you might lose overness because you've responded with the wrong reaction based on the game's algorithm. So we've added like this element where you can, you'll have to respond to being put into videos by Cultaholic. So you might be in a video where you've had a really bad match and you'll be rated really poorly, and you'll have to respond to that. And again, depending on how you respond. So we wanted to keep that fun kind of element. And so we're trying to add kind of publications to the game so that we can bring that fun atmosphere and that rumor kind of space, that internet wrestling community kind of fandom part to the game. So it makes it a bit more, interactive that way.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. It sounds really good because I think, the internet, social media has become such a massive thing, especially for an independent wrestler. The closer, I think the closeness now that they have as an independent wrestler, you don't necessarily have to have that exposure on, the main promotions anymore. If you do a very good job with your social media, with your own content, there's every chance you can be known just as much as anybody else. You take people like Will Ospreay, for instance. He's not worked in any of the big American companies, but everybody knows Will Ospreay in the wrestling world for the New Japan stuff and stuff like that. But I just think, social media is such a big, fascinating part that it's played. Where years back, of course, if you was an independent wrestler through the 90s, the chances of being known, unless you did make it to those main stages, were very, very slim, shall we say, back then. Obviously, we'll address the elephant in the room with the whole COVID situation going on. Is that taken a little bit of a sort of back step for you guys doing the game, or have you managed to sort of adapt and still be able to sort of process what you initially had set out before all this?
No, so I'll tell you what's interesting is COVID has actually accelerated the game.
Wow.
So what happened originally was we were doing a Kickstarter. We had a kind of agreement in principle with a really big online wrestling company, and they were going to promote the game for us, and we were going to do some marketing for them. Anyway, long story short, it kind of it fell through the cracks, and we're still speaking to them about working together in the future. But we went out and we had this massive idea for the game. We were going to have men and women in the game, so you could be a female and you can go through a female's journey in the game. We were going to have online gaming, so you can work with your mate. We were going to have the ability to upload your own kind of gear and adapt that to your wrestler. We were going to have like lots and lots of, we're going to have promoters, we're going to have their own personalities. So one promoter was going to be a hardcore guy, one was going to be a sports entertainment guy, one was going to be a British, traditional British wrestling kind of guy. And based on where you were going, you'd have to adapt your, so we had really big, and that's just like we had a lot of really big ideas for the game. And we didn't raise the amount of money that we needed to create the game at that level. And then COVID happened. And so I sat down with it and I said, look, there's all these wrestling fans have got a big dearth of wrestling space right now. This was before we knew what was happening with WWE and AEW and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, everyone